about 6 months later, after that, we found a job in Greensboro Country Club. And like I said, I've been there 22 years. I've realized that through my career path, Ages has changed my thought process. And 22 years of that at Greensboro Country Club has really given me the idea of country club life and what I can do and what tennis pros can do when they look towards their future. So here I am at Greensboro Country Club, again, 22 years, social activities, dealing with a different facet. I took what I would consider a step backwards from competitive players and dealt a lot with 2-5, 3-0s, juniors that had many activities, as we all start to deal with now. Kids are playing soccer, baseball, football, whatever. And that actually wasn't bad for me my first 10 years. It was taking that step backwards. So I enjoyed that atmosphere, and all of a sudden things started to change, and the club started to grow tennis-wise. I am fortunate enough to have 3 teaching pros with me that organize all the activities that we do. But I really felt where my career path started and is still here, and as it ends, it's about the people I deal with day in and day out. And I don't care what business you're in, where you're at, public sector, private sector, it's about communicating to the people that you deal with on a day-by-day basis. It's about connecting. It's about understanding what they want. And I know I get off on tangents here, but I think it's really important for us to understand that we're really touching lives. At 26-year-olds, I had no idea I was touching lives and making these young kids grow up and remember me 20 years later. It was more about them learning about the sport, making them good players. But today, I hate to say this, today at 59 years old and not far away from 60, I really have thought out this, and it's been a joy for me to be on the social side. And I think as you all look at your career paths, I think it's really important to look at what you're trying to do now, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now. So I think it's important as you move forward. And I know we have a vast array of tennis pros here in ages from, I'm guessing, 25 to as old as I am. And I think you really will find out quickly as you move forward that as you age, your career path changes. Mine did, yours will, and you need to reevaluate that on a periodical basis. So, kind of giving you my overall career with that, I think one of the things that I want to go through, I guess, and give you some scenarios. And now, with 3 teaching pros, I'm not on the court as much as I used to be. Actually, I'm not on the court at all anymore. I manage 2 facilities, and Ken knows this, that I travel between 2 facilities that are about 15, 20 minutes apart. They're both part of the same club. So I don't have an opportunity to be on the court like I sometimes want to be or can be. So I have my teaching pros do all that. But as I look forward, and now I'm kind of backstepping here and thinking about the people that come into my business and the people that I interview and the people that I hire. Good morning, Pat. I didn't see you there. Good to see you, sir. Things that I look for. And oddly enough, I told Ken last night when I came in here from North Carolina, I'm actually in the process of hiring a teaching pro right now. And I said, Ken, I'm going to throw that in there. So in case anybody wants to talk to me, I'm more than happy to discuss the opportunity of a job. So, and Ken knows that I've gone through this. I've been lucky enough to put 25 teaching pros that have gone through Greensboro Country Club now to either head teaching pros or director's jobs. So, there's things now that I'm touching differently. Along with my members, I'm now trying to touch teaching pros' lives and getting them out there to understand more about the business. But I think things that I look for when I'm hiring, and I think you all need to think about this as you move forward, is what kind of traits can I find in a teaching professional? What would fit Greensboro Country Club? What would fit the tennis business? And I think I look at 2 or 3 or 4 things when I go through an interviewing process, hiring a young pro or hiring an individual that comes into Greensboro Country Club. personality happens to be the most important. You know, everybody here can hit a tennis ball. I don't know at what level, and to be honest with you, I don't care at what level. If you can handshake, you can look people in the eye, you can smile, and you can be positive, and you can have high energy, and you can be motivated. And I've seen all types when I've gone and spoken different areas of the country. And it's amazing to me how I've seen negative individuals on the court that are teaching. Individuals that don't really speak well, non-motivated, almost to the point that they shouldn't really even be in the business. It's real important that you have a passion for the sport. It's real important that you have what I would call high energy. I look for high energy people all the time. Not necessarily screamers or yellers, but people that can create attention to the people that they're dealing with, the groups that they're dealing with. So as I interview people and I talk to people and I get them on the phone, I look for people that have similar personalities to myself, I guess. Very high energy. Ken's over there smiling and laughing at me. I happen to be a screamer and a yeller on the court. I do that because I think it creates attention. And again, I'm not saying that that's the way to do things, but I think it's important that when you're on the court, off the court, that you constantly try to pick up somebody's attention. Again, whether or not it's a person, one-on-one, group of people. I have a lot of women that, and we all hear, you know, again, we're in Atlanta, so I need to know a lot about Elta, and I have been away from this area for a long time, but I know Elta happens to be our passion and love. Thank you. So I think it's important that when you go out and talk to these individuals in front of you, and again, I've kind of gone off in tangents, but it's important that I stay motivated, my pros stay motivated to talk to those individuals. And when you're dealing with a lot of women, boy, oh boy, it's amazing how you create their energy through your own energy. So going back to this, what am I looking for? Motivation, energy, personality, creativity. And one of the things that I'll look at when I see resumes is organization. I can tell through a resume whether or not you took time to put your resume together or it only took you 5 minutes to put it together. I've even seen resumes that come through emails that they don't even put a resume together, they just write the email. This is what I've done. You'd be surprised what you see. So I think it's important as you look forward and you're starting to look towards that career goal, figure out your own plan towards your personality. And again, in the country club life, it's all about social, in my opinion. Creating that activity, which means that you need to really be a people person. I think we all understand that. There's a couple questions that I know Ken put down on paper for me, and I don't know if I'm going to catch them all, but I'm looking at them just to kind of refresh my memory. But one pro, one con in your current position. My pro is that I feel about is I think dealing with my members every day. I'm an early bird. I go to bed early. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm one that goes to bed at 9 o'clock. But I get up early in the morning because I want to be at work by 6:30. I want to check my emails, and I want to be ready to deal with my members every day. Smile, positive, attitude, walk in the pro shop. Good morning, Mrs. Jones. Nice to see you. Oh, we've got some new things for you. And by the way, how's your tennis game? And how's your kids' tennis game? Good. I hope we get a chance to see you tomorrow. It's that positive attitude that I want to throw out to them. So the pros there. The cons, dealing with constant personalities, both in my staff and in my members. And it's a juggle because as you all know, we can get complaints day in and day out. And dealing with those cons, I know, can be tough sometimes. Because now with social media, we've got to be very careful what we say on a computer. I try to stay away from the computer. I do everything I can to do one-on-one or group sessions to talk to people. Because I think sometimes you can write something in an email and say the wrong things and you have to backtrack. So again, I know I've kind of gone through a little bit about my career. I hope at least it gives you some idea of where I've gone through my last 30 some odd years, and I hope you get an opportunity to ask some questions, because I like question answers. It's easier to go through that. So anyway, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'm going to try and stand up instead of use the mic, if that's okay. So I kind of got lucky getting in the tennis business. I was at the right place at the right time. I was waiting tables at Houston's full time, and I had this opportunity to run a 9-court facility. Very little experience. I played college tennis, but no idea what to do. But I did know that I had to meet people. I had to put a face. I just had to meet as many people as I could. So there were 50 houses. Today there's 650. And I was knocking door to door. I was at the bus stop. I was at the playground. And then when I wasn't meeting people, I was traveling around Atlanta with a clipboard and a pencil, waiting for pros to get off the court to ask them questions. I'm given this opportunity. What would you do? How do you teach doubles? Played doubles, never taught it. How do you start a program? So I did that for a very, very long time. And it's amazing, the pros in Atlanta at the time in 1998 and 99 and still today, how open and willing they are to give their time and give their advice. So that was a huge blessing for me. And then I also dug into, this was some of the advice that I had gotten, dug into, joined GPTA, USPTA, and pretty much went to any continuing education workshop convention that I could get my hands on within a 500-mile radius for the next decade, and still am a huge advocate of continuing education. So I didn't have the luxury of learning from a head pro as an assistant or learning from a director as a head pro. I pretty much learned, got sought wise counsel, but learned from my own mistakes, which there were a lot of those. But it worked out. Today I am living my dream job. I absolutely love what I do, and very appreciative of that. As far as when I'm interviewing, what I'm looking for in a pro, I want to hire good people who are self-motivated, and I believe I can teach them the business. As far as you got to have, they got to be a player, and absolutely, depending on the position, they have to have experience and so forth. But if they're coachable, that's huge. So hiring good people to me is absolutely number one. So how do you know if you're hiring a good person? Well, a lot of that takes time, right? So to get to know people and so forth. But there's some things that we have in our interview process. One of the big things is, I want a handwritten personal letter, about that person. Not about them as a tennis pro, but about them as a person. Childhood, family, goals, dreams. That's very important to me. We were building a tennis program at Crooked Creek. I was hiring a director of junior development, which the position had I didn't even have it at the club, but it just sounded appealing, whatever. I read a personal letter from a girl in New York and knew she had no experience, but from that letter was sold. I didn't even care. I was hiring her. Made a phone call, got her down here. Most amazing hire I've ever hired. Great with kids, just amazing. But I learned so much from just a letter, and still today it's a huge part of our interview process. And that person who wrote that letter was Carmen Garcia. Look at her today. So hiring good people. A lot of our interview questions are about, we believe in our core values for our company, and I stole this from a USPTA newsletter, at least most of them, about 10 years ago. Character, commitment, courage, honesty, humility, integrity, sportsmanship, excellence, and fun. And I use those. Character, we use these core values when we teach our juniors, as well as who we bring on. If they're going to be teaching our juniors these, we want them to be living them, right? We all know as coaches, just like teachers, anyone who deals with kids, you are in a fishbowl. So it's very important, you know, everybody, if you go to the grocery store within 5 mile radius of where you teach, everyone's watching everything that you do. So character, how you define yourself. It's one of the first interview questions. How do you define yourself? Commitment. I mean, you can tell commitment by their resume. I think that's important. Teaching a kid, if you want to be good at something, you got to be committed. Courage. You know, being scared, but doing it anyway. So in an interview setting, it's are you the type of person? How would you handle this situation? You know, do you attack that conversation head on, the tough conversations? I know I struggle with that. Or do you take the easy way out? You know, honesty. Uno for me. I mean, absolutely number one. You can't trust somebody. You know, that's what a relationship is built on. So consistently telling the truth is what we teach the kids. Humility is very important. I don't want to say it's difficult to find in this industry, but you're dealing with a lot of tennis pros who are the best at what they do. And I know in our club settings, arrogance doesn't sit well with women. They see right through that. Kids can take it or leave it. Men, doesn't work. So being humble is huge. Integrity is my favorite. Okay? This is my dad's definition. Doing the right thing when nobody's looking. I mean, living with integrity is absolutely important. Sportsmanship. So obviously, if you're teaching the kids, you know, to be a good sport, we want to bring on a pro who doesn't slam their racket down if they lose. You know, if we're doing pro competition wherever, true colors shine. I've always said 2 things bring out true colors: alcohol and sports. Sportsmanship, excellence, and fun. Fun is very, very important. So that's what we're looking for, and I mean, that's absolutely very important. So good people who are self-motivated. So self-motivation, I'm just one that I don't believe that I can motivate somebody. I believe I can provide an inspiring environment, and I can inspire and encourage, but I believe motivation comes from within, the internal need to accomplish a goal. So it's so important in this industry that when we bring a pro on, that they're self-motivated. Have you ever worked with or worked under or worked for somebody that's just not really motivated? It's difficult. So that is, it's very huge. So we've got a whole section that of questions that deal with, you know, self-motivation. And they're not black and white. Again, only time really tells if somebody's motivated. But past performance is the best indicator for future results. Y'all believe that? So, and I do believe, you know, people change and so forth, but the past performance is, to me, number one indicator of, you know, how they're going to be in the future. So hire good people who are self-motivated and teach them the business. Well, can you teach somebody who's not coachable the business? So the coachability is just as important. And humility has a lot to do with that as well. How do you take constructive criticism is huge. I mean, if you're working with somebody who just, they shut down at constructive criticism, how are they going to grow? So I think that's a very big, important part. So what I'm looking for in a resume, I would say what's so appealing for me is I started with 13 kids, I ended with 39. I built 2 beginner league teams. I started this program on my own. Something that a pro went to a facility and left, and they were that much better. So if you are, you know, putting your resume together, or if you're currently at a job, I would highly recommend that you that you track all that stuff. Track all your charity events. Track what the numbers are important. Track in the references. so impressive when you get a reference of former employers, but then you also get a page of reference of clients. I mean, that's huge. So having the clients, and we've created an online form that we can send references, just a format to fill out, and it's amazing some of the responses back from clients. So I think that's very key. Consistency is absolutely important. Bringing somebody on who can stay steady at a place. Somebody who jumps ship a lot is it's not appealing to very many directors. So industry as a whole, I agree. Personality is absolutely number one. Personality, communication, the ability to communicate with your clients, communicate with your staff, your employer. Retention rate is huge. I got a resume the other day, and it said he retained 90% of his clients from the year before, and 100% of his privates. So retention's huge. And as far as in this industry, I mean, retaining your students, it says it all. I'm a big believer that as far as marketing goes, number one marketing tool for a tennis pro is repeat customers. Okay, if you have a player on the court with you, you have the best chance of getting that player back to you than you do anybody else around. So once you get them on the court, you got to do what it takes. So when you have an event or you want them to sign up for a clinic or whatever, so repeat customer is number one. In my book, number two is word of mouth. Sally telling Joni, Eric's good. Go take a lesson from him. That means way more than me going up to my client saying, you know, actually not way more, because I think that's third. So I think number one is your repeat customers. When you got them on there, keep them. Two is word of mouth, them telling their friends. Three is me face to face. Carmen, come to my cardio class tomorrow morning at 9. Okay? Third most effective right there. Fourth is me picking up the phone and calling or sending a personal text. Okay? Next would be a personal email. That in my book's number 5, a personal email. And then the least effective marketing tool for a tennis pro, and I'm just as guilty of it, is mass email. Delete, delete, delete. So number one, boom, repeat customers. That's huge. Another thing that's huge is, for me, is they gotta love kids. If they don't love kids, it's a part-time job pretty much, right? So, I mean, that's big time. I mean, just something in there to where that's their passion. They love kids. If you love kids, you're automatically gonna love adults. If you love adults, doesn't necessarily mean you love kids. And then showing that you care. In your resumes, what do you do? Listing all your continuing education classes, giving a sense that you're eager to learn, but also charity events, and then even stories. You know, could be a side note, a second or third phase, but stories or face-to-face in the interview of how you care about your clients. Because in this industry, it's all about personality, building relationships. No matter if you're at a public facility, you're at a country club, you're at private, it's building relationships. So showing them you care is huge. And then another thing and this is nothing you can determine from reading a resume, but I think it's something important. I think this is one of the big things that separates a good pro from a great pro, and that is the ability to read your clientele. And I think that's something that's difficult to teach. And that's just this awareness of your surroundings. If you have 6 ladies on the court and, you know, half of them are like this, or, you know, even 3 of them, does the pro switch the drill and so forth? So a huge phase of ours is watching them teach kids, watch them teach, you know, adults. But I think that's a good characteristic. It's something that if you are interviewing, something to bring up if you do believe that you do that, or if not, if it's something that you can work at, because it's one of the things that's difficult to teach. But how do you read your clientele? I know I've been in a drill for 10 minutes and the whole class is just like, I don't know what I'm doing and this is boring, and the pro just continues to do it. So I think that's awesome. So pro and con about what I do. Owning my own business, the con of that is you never clock out. Okay? Never clock out. But the pro of it is you get to take vacations whenever you want. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't have a boss, because I have 2,300 bosses. Every resident or homeowner in our communities is my boss. But definitely being able to take vacations whenever you want. So, thank you.
Good morning. I'm going to go back to the microphone because I don't know that my voice is going to really project this morning. My name is Joe Ambler, and I am the tennis director and camp director and senior sports director at the Carly Sanders Family YMCA at Buckhead. If anybody's unfamiliar with that facility, it kind of is like a country club, nonprofit. If anybody has ever been to that facility, it is quite a nice facility. It has a lot of history. It used to be the Northside Athletic Club at one point in time. And I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of my history and how I've gotten to where I am today. I think I'm a little bit like Heather. I was at the right place at the right time to some degree, but I want to talk even just a bit more, not necessarily about the tennis industry, but a couple of things that also led me to where I am today. First off, I started playing tennis when I was probably about 11 or 12 years old. I think some of the individuals that I know here a little bit better, guys like Brian Taylor would probably attest. I'm not the greatest tennis player in the world. I'm not too bad. Played a little bit in college. But when I was about 14 or 15 years old, I worked at a country club, or I took lessons at a country club, and there was a lady there by the name of Dana Forsyth who is like a second mother to me. She's just a beautiful lady, was a wonderful person, and really was a mentor for me at the time. She gave me the opportunity to actually start teaching at about 15 years old. It was really volunteer. I just kind of helped out with some of the younger kids' clinics and really enjoyed that. Really was starting to become passionate about working with young kids and working with youth. And that's something that kind of through my high school years was very formative for me. And then that kind of turned into, I started stringing and I started doing the maintenance there at the country club. I learned actually how to work clay courts at that time, and actually how to resurface clay courts, because that particular club didn't exactly have a large budget for their tennis program. The golf was really kind of their primary thing there, and so I really learned a lot of different technical skills at that time. It was really pretty interesting. So went through, played at a small school in Tennessee, Maryville College, got married right out of college, moved to Atlanta. My wife went to Agnes Scott, and right out of college, I worked in college and was part of an organization called, at the time, American Humanics. And it was a nonprofit management institute. So essentially what formed from there is, I looked for jobs in a number of different sectors and landed in a government job working for the Department of Juvenile Justice in DeKalb counties. So if anybody's unfamiliar with this, essentially what I was doing is working with at-risk youth who had committed crimes and were essentially committed to the state of Georgia. And this is a pretty difficult job, just to be totally honest. It's impossible not to take your work home with you. I was dealing with kids who were sexually abused, who had mental health issues, who were sexual abusers, kids who had committed a variety of crimes, all the way from petty theft all the way to murder. And it was really a trying time in my life, and really a time where my faith grew throughout my life. And during this time, I actually was approached to start teaching tennis. I started doing some tennis clinics just to try and keep myself in shape. And I started teaching a little bit on the side at DeKalb Tennis Center over close to where we live. And so that's kind of where my career started to evolve. And then all of a sudden, kind of landed, one of the individuals that I'd been playing with said, hey, my daughter, my son's girlfriend is the director over at the Carl Sanders YMCA. So if anybody's familiar with Autumn Sisk or Autumn Richards, she was at the time. And so I spoke with her, and they said they needed a teaching pro. So I said, I might be interested in this. So I started working there part-time, which ended up kind of me transferring from the Department of Juvenile Justice into a full-time position, essentially. And there I had the pleasure of kind of being mentored by Autumn and by an individual some of you may know, Joe Becknell, as well. Joe is in his 70s, he's 75 years old, but he has taught me, I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is just how to interact with individuals, especially on the tennis court. The care this man has for the people that he works with is unbelievable. I mean, it's infectious, and I'll give you just kind of some tidbits of what he does. He creates these laminated cards, and he has these things called Joe-isms that he hands to the ladies, and he'll hand them out before the matches. I mean, it's the little things sometimes that you do. We'll show up and we do a warm-up on Thursday morning for the ladies, and he's handing out these cheap little hearts, that you can get at Michael's, that sort of thing, and, hands them out to the ladies, and they're sticking them all over their rackets. They've got these laminated cards. They're hanging them on their Alta bags like they're the bag tags. I mean, they got them all over the place. It's unbelievable. But that's the piece of what I have learned, and what I've taken from him is kind of going that extra mile. He takes that personal relationship, that one-on-one interaction that he has, and for me, that's, when we talk about the skill sets of what you have in your position, two of the big ones, and I think we've all kind of said it, is personality, okay, and interpersonal relationships that you have. How do you build those interpersonal relationships? People don't just want to have a tennis lesson. I'm convinced of that at this point. They want to have that relationship with somebody as well. That's important to them. It's important to them to have a sense of community, a sense of kind of building that community within, wherever they might be, but also with individuals. And so I sympathize with Heather as well. I feel the same way. You're kind of going all the time. It feels like a 24-hour job at times because you're communicating constantly with people. But that's in some ways that's a big positive too, because when you put yourself front and center with those individuals, that's how you build relationships. That's how you interact with them, and that's how you go that extra mile for those individuals. So essentially what's happened is I started teaching there at the YMCA for about 3 years or so. Joe Becknell was the director, Autumn was the assistant director. Joe retired. He's still there to this day. And Autumn, after a couple of years as the director, she stepped down to she was pregnant, decided to be a stay-at-home mom at that point in time. And then I stepped in as the director, and I've been there for about 5 years as the tennis director. Well, one of the things that happens at the YMCA apparently is that when your bosses think that you've done a good job, they ask you to do more. So at that point in time, we have a pretty large camp program. We have during the summer about 300 to 350 kids that we have, and so that was kind of tossed into my court as well. Said, Joe, you're doing a great job with the tennis program. How does camp sound to you? Oh, well, it sounds great. And a lot of kind of what Tom was talking about, you have these reflections about what you're doing in your career, and where is my path? Where is the next step? And so sometimes you kind of have to take a plunge. Do I know anything about camp? Absolutely not. I had no idea about anything. Do I know a lot more now? Sure I do. Yeah, absolutely. I knew about tennis camp, knew how to run tennis camps, but I didn't know how to run soccer camps. I didn't know how to run some of these other things. But one of the things that you find is that you take some of your skill sets that you've used to be successful, and it's very transferable into other realms and other pieces. So I've done that for the last couple of years, and then of course, well, hey, you did a great job with camp. How about you just take over the whole sports department? Okay. And so now it's been kind of a balancing act and a juggling act of trying to still do all those things for myself, because currently I'm running 3 departments, and I have, I believe, I think it's well over 100 staff that I supervise at this point. So it is quite the challenge. One of the things that you start to learn is how do I delegate those responsibilities to other individuals, and then also the hiring process is extremely important. Some of the things that that really makes kind of the YMCA an interesting organization for myself. It is a nonprofit, but it is also a very corporate organization, and I think that's kind of important for people to understand that. It's a very large organization. Our specific branch has 22,000 members, so it's extremely large. Some of those are full facility members, some of them are program members. It's just different types. But the thing that's interesting about the Y, and kind of one of the things that is interesting for me, is the mission of the organization. And that's something that is important to me. Is some of the things that like the goals, for example, for the Metro Atlanta YMCA for their 2020 vision, is they're trying to the 4 key components is really kind of ensure healthy living through a number of different outlets. And let's see, the other 3, I'm so sorry. The other 2, okay, ensure school readiness for youth. The YMCA is one of the largest providers in the state. Like, if you're familiar with Head Start programs, almost all of those are run by the YMCA. So, and then the other 2 are improve academic achievement, and then also, let's see, inspire team leadership. I'm so sorry. So those 4 components, the interesting thing for me is running the programs that we do and what we do is a vehicle to assist in those areas. Now, I might not be able to be involved in those Head Start programs, but what I know is that the money that we receive as an organization goes right back into that, and that's inspiring to me. Because as an organization, we get to see the benefits from that, not only at our branch, but also at other branches as well. One of the things that's unique about our specific branch is we are in a very wealthy area, but we're also right next to Bankhead, if anybody's kind of familiar with that area as well. And there's not a whole lot of opportunities for those individuals, especially those kids in those areas. And we have very strong relationships with several of the elementary schools in that area. Woodson Elementary, Grove Park, and a couple of others. We have a unique program. We have a donor who donates a certain amount of money to us every year, and we have some other organizations that we have grants through, where we have about 60 to 100 kids that actually come to our branch every day. And those kids get to participate in swimming, they get to participate in tennis, and they get to participate in homework assistance, and something that we have that's called Youth Fit for Life, that's addressing childhood obesity. And the interesting thing is we get to, I don't get to work with a whole lot of kids who are kind of at that elite level, if you will, or kind of even at a tournament level, but we get to expose a lot of kids to tennis. And one of the things that's interesting about that program, we always do a survey with that program just to kind of see where the kids are. Like, what do they like to do? What's your favorite part? Always, and this will be good for Ian to hear this too, always, the kids always say tennis. It's 90 to 100% of the time, it's tennis, 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 tennis. And so we've got these other opportunities now because of that and because of those things, where we're actually going to the schools, and these schools are having so much difficulty during these times, even kind of coming up with programming for some of these kids, that we're going now into the schools here soon and actually providing tennis as kind of a PE type class during the day, during kind of one of their breaks, which is, we're really looking forward to it, really excited about those sorts of things. So one benefit of our organization and kind of the path that I've taken is that it's you get to learn a lot of different skill sets, from grant writing and things of that nature. And us being the type of organization we are, and the recognition and the national kind of base that we have, we're able to leverage a lot of different relationships. So it's interesting some of the relationships that we've been able to have. Like the YMCA has been the charitable partner for the BB&C Atlanta Open the last few years, which has been a great learning experience for me, and it has really kind of impacted some of those kids in our camps that don't necessarily have the opportunity to be involved in tennis, and we've gotten that through USTA and some of those, and through the BB&T grants and things of that nature, which has been awesome. It's been fantastic. So we've been able to expose a lot of kids to tennis. Some of the things that I'm looking for when we're interviewing individuals, and I don't necessarily just want to talk about tennis. I mean, I know we're all here for tennis, but the things that I'm looking for are their involvement in the community, their involvement in what they're passionate about outside of what I'm looking for. Like, what are they doing outside of that? Are they involved in a local nonprofit? Are they volunteering their time for anything? I think these are the type of people that, Heather was talking about self-motivation and things of that nature. I think when you see people who are volunteering their time for something that they believe in, I think that's a great sign of the type of person that you're looking for within your organization. And that applies to tennis, that applies to our camp counselors. Let's see. A lot of what I'm looking for in terms of a red flag, I think the biggest thing I'm looking at when I'm looking at a kind of a red flag in interviews or anything of that nature is really just somebody that's very self-focused, I guess is probably the way I would describe it. I do want to know about people, but I also want to know about what drives you, okay? What are you interested in the outside? What motivates you? What is, tell me your story. And that's something that's big at our YMCA as well, or at the Y, is that we want to tell stories. That's something that's really big in our organization, and because that's how we kind of get across that connection and build those relationships with individuals, is being able to tell a story. And that's a lot of what I'm looking at in an interview, is somebody being able to tell me their story and kind of listening to that. The other piece and what I'm looking for, has anybody ever done the Listen First training? Does anybody know what I'm talking about when I say that? Nobody has ever done the Listen First training. Oh my gosh. Okay, so.
Can you give us a crash course?
Yeah, right. So the Listen First training, it's kind of a hokey thing a little bit, if you've ever done it before. But it's this training where it essentially trains individuals to how to respond and how to listen to other people when you're communicating with them. Because one of the things that I find more often than not, sometimes with tennis pros, or really anybody, is that we get a little bit too defensive at times, or we don't really listen to what the individual has to say. And this training is extremely helpful. So if anybody has ever heard kind of, I hear you, so what I hear you saying is, so if we were to have a dialogue and that's how I respond back to you. And so what it does is it manages expectations, right? So, and that's kind of another piece of what I wanted to talk about is you're trying to understand exactly what the person is saying by repeating back to them what they have said to you. And so when you're dealing with, individuals that you're giving lessons to and things of that nature, it's really interesting when you start to think about expectations. What do they expect out of it, right? Because I have my expectations. Hey, I'm going to teach a forehand today, okay? I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to do forehands today, and that's what I want to do. But what do they want to do? And sometimes to, Heather's point, I mean, you're in a position where you're saying to yourself, you know what, I'm 10 minutes into this drill, and nobody's happy at this point, How am I going to change things up? And sometimes it's a matter of questions to those individuals, okay? So that communication piece is extremely important to me. But the Listen First training, if you guys have the opportunity to do it, I highly recommend it and I think it's a great training tool, especially if you are a director or anything along those lines, because it really starts to get people to think in those terms of listening to their participants and to their individuals, and not necessarily just, it's good to have a game plan. I'm not saying don't have a game plan, but sometimes you gotta have to listen a little bit as well. Let's see. Ultimately, I think pros and cons, man. pros and cons for my position, I think they're both the same thing, to be totally honest. The pro for my position is that I get to wear a lot of hats. So I get the opportunities to dabble in a lot of different things. So it's really kind of broadened out my skill set in terms of my knowledge of different sports and different technical pieces across the board. Camp, kind of the camp environment being I think I'm almost overly conscious of safety at times now at this point, especially when you're dealing with, and you have an understanding of that you're dealing with somebody's babies, you know? You've got their kids with you, and so you have to have a very kind of strong grasp on safety and what that looks like. And the Y does a great job in training that, and I think that's very important for us to kind of remember, especially as directors, or even even if you're working independently. I think it's important to kind of remember some of those safety pieces. But the con also is that I wear several hats, and it stretches me a lot of the times in different directions. So it's become an increasing challenge in how do I manage my time to continue to make our tennis program successful and to continue to branch things out, but then also create that in other departments at our branch as well. So I think that's it.
Now we're really going to get a chance to get to know you guys and ask some tough questions. And I hope you don't mind, I'm going to be a little bit selfish here. I'm going to start. Here's a couple questions. I had a couple that I want, and I sent them all, most of them. I'm not going to go off the grid on this, but I think we have a great range of pros here from all different experience. So from assistant pros to directors. And I think you guys are all talking from great experience and talking about when you're interviewing someone else, and that's great for us to all hear, because I want to know, what are you looking for? And we talk about red flags, and you heard red flags, because I put red flags in capital letters in here, because we're looking at it. And I'm going to ask you from a different point, because you're directors, but we all got there, okay? When you were interviewing for a job, I'm going to let any one of you guys take a jab at this, you can all do it. When you were interviewing for a job, what were some red flags that you saw that made you leery about that position? So in other words, if I'm interviewing with Heather, she's awesome, and she says a couple things, and I'm going, I'm not really sure, okay, I'm going to go take the job, but then I find out, you know what, she put everything on the table there, but this isn't a job for me. What are some things, like when you're going, say, maybe this isn't the right place? What are some things that, I don't see, Tom's already put it in the right. Go ahead.
Yeah, I knew it.
Yeah, I'm going to go after you on that one.
All this high-tech stuff there. All right. I thought about this because I knew a question like this may come on up, and Ken kind of threw this at us. And I've gone through a lot of different interviews myself, both as an assistant pro and as a director. First thing I'll tell you, red flags. Before I go into an interviewing process and I've interviewed for 4 different clubs now as a director, I really did my research prior to going to the interview. I think when you look at a club or a facility, I want to be sure I'm walking into that interview with some knowledge of their background and history, budgets, financial situations. How financially stable is the people that you're going to be teaching? How big was the history of the program before they're looking at me or have this position open? Is it junior driven? Is it adult driven? Is it well-rounded? Are they missing certain things? I can't tell you how many times I made phone calls to pros around the area and said, tell me about this club. I want to know about what the reason why this job's even open. Did they let the pro go before? Excuse me. Did they? Did this individual retire? Did he leave on his own? Did he go to another club? What's the history of this facility that I'm looking at? Once I can get that information going in for an interview, I have questions I want to ask them. Always go into an interview with a certain amount of questions. How big was your junior program? What is your expectations of me as a tennis director to come in as this interview? Do you want me to build your junior program? Do you want me to build an adult program? Do you want to have more socials? Are you a club or a facility that wants more tournaments, less tournaments, member-driven, retention and attraction? I heard about retention. It's so gigantic today, especially in the club business, because clubs are shutting down left and right today in this country. And it's not easy to survive in the country club business or club business in general. So, I'm kind of, again, weaving around this, but the red flags that concern me, I want a club that I'm going to go to that's well-rounded, that has the variety of teaching juniors, adults, socials, or at least a facility that I can build those things. Those three things to me are very important. I'm not a big tournament person anymore. I don't want to run a lot of tournaments unless they're club driven. We all have, again, our goals and expectations of what we want to do, but I want to deal with juniors so I can see those juniors when they become adults. I want to have a junior 10-year-old that now at 35, he's now a member of the club or she's a member of the club. I want to deal with women's leagues, competitive programs, start a new lady from beginner and let her grow. Start a man who's never played tennis or starts at a 2.5 and he now gets excited about playing USTA or ELTA or whatever. Socials, again, I want to run as many socials as we can because I like the camaraderie. So can this club be involved with those things? I look at that over and over. So if I hear, gee, we're really a club that wants to develop just an adult program, ooh, there's a red flag. Or we really want to develop nothing but tournament juniors. Well, what about the rest of the individuals that are around there, that big package? We want to just do a lot of socials. Well, where is this club really looking for? What's their culture? What's their goals? So I throw that out and let the other two guys talk. I can talk all day on this stuff, but I really think what you need to do before you go into an interview, do your research, understand, and you may minimize those red flags before you even go in for an interview.
Okay. I'll give you kind of just a personal experience. I'd say one of the biggest red flags that I've ever had when I've been in a job interviewing for a job was when an individual told me, do you feel like you're right for the position, knowing that you're going to be working with kids who are in gangs, may have guns, knives, things of that nature? That was kind of a scary moment for me in an interview, to be totally honest. In terms of red flags within the tennis industry, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Research is everything, and sometimes that information is not going to be available for you right on the forefront. You can't always Google that information and bring it right up. So you have to have those connections and relationships with other individuals in the industry or in the area, so that you can kind of make those connections with what's going on at that particular location or that particular club if you're interviewing for a job. Another red flag for me would be just somebody who doesn't feel like they want to be a part of a team. Like kind of they have their own vision of what they want to do. I think there are some really successful people in our industry who work independently, and those people are great and those people are awesome. But I think at times too, those individuals, they want to be their own boss. And for an organization like myself, again, it's kind of a corporate organization. We want somebody who's going to be a part of the team, contributes to the team. Okay, I want to listen to their ideas, and for them to be a part, but not necessarily have this kind of create this own vision that's very different from what our organization stands for, if that makes sense. And that's just kind of an understanding of when somebody comes in the door of what we're about. I think for the most part, they've done their research.
Anybody have a question? I have more, but I want to ask. Anyone have any questions? Question? Oh, I'm going to throw another one out. All right, I got one. I'm going to make Heather answer this one. That's all right, you all can answer this one. All right, so that was kind of a good one going in. Like I said, I've gone into certain positions and interviewed, and I think it's very important what y'all are saying is research, listen. Because a lot of times when we're interviewing, we're always thinking, okay, I got to answer a question, We're thinking about what we're going to say and less about what they're saying. But that's good. So now I'm going to take one from a director. This is kind of a tough one. I think all of us who have people working under us, What is your procedure when handling a tennis pro that is doing a poor job or does something that is a fireable offense?
Okay, I don't remember a situation where I had to fire somebody on the spot in my 16 or 17 years in it. Not saying I've never had to let anyone go, but for me it's been an ongoing conversation. We like to do what we call G&Is every 90 days, goals and initiatives. Are we meeting your expectations? Are you meeting ours? Are you following your scope of work and so forth, and warnings? But I've never been in a situation where anyone's done something where I'm like, you can't come back. Actually, I have.
Yes, we all have.
It was a camp counselor was getting stoned in the parking lot.
Oh.
Yeah, that was way long ago. And they're actually in this room. I'm not going to say the name. No, I'm just kidding.
Can I leave now? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, what we do a lot of the times is if somebody is, there's two different questions here, because if somebody's doing a poor job, that's one thing. If they're doing something that's a fireable offense, that's another. If somebody's doing a poor job, oftentimes what we do is we put them on a 30-day action plan, and that's just a 30 days of here are the expectations. We write out the expectations. A lot of times we'll give potentially a warning ahead of time, that sort of thing. This sounds very corporate, doesn't it? A warning ahead of time, but the 30-day action plan, it works really well, to be totally honest. I mean, because it sets the expectations of what I expect out of the employee, and it's written down, it's there, it's visual for them to see, and we line that out together and then sign off on it, and they have 30 days kind of to get it together. If it's a fireable offense, you know, a lot of times, if the way I tend to operate, if I have a teaching professional, okay, they're a teaching professional. I expect kind of professional behavior and professional attitudes. So for me, if it's a fireable offense, then it's cutting your losses at that point and moving forward. And it's not an easy thing to do. I do not have that type of personality where I can do that very easily. I'm a very kind of emotionally attached person a lot of the times, so it's pretty difficult for me to do. And I can't imagine that it's easy for anybody, to be totally honest. So, but that's how we handle things.
I don't think it's that difficult. I'm sorry. Somebody's making a mistake that doesn't adhere to our integrity, honesty, and you know, Heather threw this out in her conversation. When you're interviewing somebody, you want to be sure you can find that person that has that loyalty, that integrity, that honesty. So I hear twofold as well in this question. One is poor performance. I constantly want to be sure I'm coaching, especially the first 90 days. I'm coaching this new individual or these new individuals all the time, so they understand our culture, our way of thinking, our club's way of thinking, so they can fit in and not have any issues. So if we start to see poor performance, and Ken knows this, I'm a very upfront and honest individual. I will pull that person into the office and we'll go through a coaching session. A week later, we'll go through it again to be sure that this person has the opportunity to stay and work at the club. Now, if poor performance continues, and we have to document everything. We're a club with 325 employees and 1,500 members, and it's very corporate. And so if that continues, you bet I'm more than happy to sit down, more than unhappy to sit down and say it's time for you to move on. Unfortunately, and I've just had to do this twice in the last year and a half, 2 years, that we've had two different employees that were not honest and didn't create integrity to our club and business. And again, they're gone, and I hope to never see them again, but it was two instances. One was an unfortunate sexual instance with a member, and to me, that's real easy. You bring the person in, you ask them the question, you show them the documentation that we've heard, and you get them out of the door as quickly as possible. You cut your losses. And the other one I had, unfortunately, was embezzlement. And that took a little longer to do my documentation, but when I found out exactly who the individual was and what was going on, it didn't take long for me to bring him in and grab his keys and have security walk him out as quickly as possible. So I personally, if I know that there's an issue, we don't want a bad apple in our department, in our program, and in our culture. So I'm not afraid to make the decision as quickly as possible because it is important. We as tennis pros, I wish my wife was here because she ended up, I see my tennis pro family more than I see my family. And not many pros can say this, it's just my way of thinking. I work 7 days a week. It's my prerogative to do that. It's not by my contract, but I'm an individual that wants to be at the club every day to be sure that everything's running smooth, and I enjoy it. So, I say that the longer we're in this business, you're going to find out that it's not a 9-to-5 job, and you got to be sure that you feel good about the people around you that you're working for and with. And if we have that bad apple, I'm making the change as quickly as possible. And again, we are around those people longer and more per day, per week, per month than usually we are with our own families. And I know I'm long-winded all the time, Ken, but I love my wife to death, but she married me 37 years ago knowing what I was going to be like with this business. And I'm there at 6:30. I don't leave until late, so the people that are around me have to understand that we're all part of this family and team, and we really need to get along. So, long-winded as usual.
Never.
Thanks.
That's okay. We got time. We got time. Does anyone have another question? Yes.
Right after college, tennis during college, coaching was always my passion. You move, you have kids. I guess the question is for my age, not quite your age, but not quite 50. Going on, I've been teaching 35 years, so you can do the math. How, now trying to get more into a full-time position with tennis, or at least to be quarters time, how hireable is someone at my age, or do the club ladies want to see somebody from another country with their delicious accent as they're teaching? So, that's something that I'm 58. But,
Boy, I'll tell you, understand, and I'm, again, been there 22 years, I'm 59 years old, my mind starts thinking, my kids are out of the household, I've got a grandchild. You go through this process and you change your lifestyle as you age, your career goals. And I look at things differently now as a tennis director when I'm hiring than I did 15, 20 years ago. And 20 years ago when I was 34, 35 years old, I always wanted the young buck out there with me, the 26-year-old male or female. You're just as marketable as any young individual, but you have to know what your strengths are, and you have to portray those strengths to the individuals that you're going to be interviewing with, whatever those may be. You may deal with children, you may be great with kids, you may be excellent with high performance kids, you may be super with ladies. Whatever your strengths are, as you put that in your resume, as you put that on the phone when you're interviewing on phone interviews, which I always do before I bring in for personal interviews, I do a questionnaire. Put that in your questionnaire. Find a way to write that information. Here are my strengths. I can do these things for your club or program or facility. It is really important for you to promote yourself with your strengths. Stay away from, I'm 58 years old and I've been in this business for 35 years. People don't want to hear that. People want to know what you can do for them. What you can do to help build, retain, and attract players to the program. So no matter how old you are, I don't care if you're 25 or 65 or 70, we all have strengths, and you've got to know how to promote those strengths within your interviewing process, your resume, your phone conversations, whatever it takes, but you've got to be sure you push those strengths out. And I have no idea who you are, I don't know what your strengths are, but if I could pull you over for 5 or 10 minutes and ask, you sure better be able to tell me, I am really good with Elta 3, 5, and 4 women. And by the way, I love dealing with the little 4 and 5-year-olds. Let's get some red ball out, short court tennis, and let's make it happen. And that's the energy that you can bring to me at 58, 68, or 25. And that's one of the things that I mentioned when I look in interviewing somebody is energy. You can have energy at any age. So don't sell yourself short at 58 years old, 59 years old, 65 years old. Don't feel that the young buck, male or female, is the only way to go.
I absolutely agree with Tom. I think there's a place for everyone. 10 years ago, I had a guy come to our club. We weren't even really hiring, and was persistent. And that's one of the things I meant to mention, because when a director is interviewing, persistence within boundaries is definitely needed in a lot of situations, because interviewing a lot of times is a full-time job. But anyway, this gentleman was very persistent, not very persistent, but was just a good person. I didn't even have a position available for him, maybe mid-40s at the time, but showed up, put himself in our classes. I mean, was just there, gave his time to our club for a couple days, you know, and then the next week would call. Anyway, we were fully staffed, did not have a position. I knew this guy, as I got to know him, was just a good guy. I knew he was a good person. Handed him a directory of 650 homes and said, here, highlighted the people who were already taking private lessons. You can call the rest, and this is your rate. And within 2 weeks, created a full-time job for himself. So anyway, I think I'm not saying that's the way, but I think Robbie's question was, are you marketable, you know, no matter what age you are? And I think there's a place for everyone. And Tom made a great point as far as these are my strengths. That's so appealing. But don't shut down and say, you know, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that. But anyway, that gentleman was Mike Corpening, who's still in the industry today and awesome.
I like that. You had a question?
Yes, sir. I have a question for Heather. How do you start an ATA team or USA team? I started a team.
Our documents, we list captain and co-captain, because anything can happen to the captain. You got to have somebody strong, you know, to pick up the pieces and really keep it together. And then how do you retain that team? Stay in close communication with your captains. Maybe send them the rules and your league, your club boundaries. As far as if you go to playoffs, let us know. We want to be there to support you. If you win city or, you know, team lessons, just stay in close communication. And a lot of times those adult teams will just stay together for a long time.
Does anyone else have another question we got time for? Yes.
I'd like you to comment a little bit on how you check your references. I mean, I'm assuming that you probably have 98% of the employees that you hired have been really good, but there may be that 2% that has gone through your process, and when you check your references, obviously somebody's going to put down a positive reference. So maybe you can comment on how maybe you handle a situation there.
I know I can, and I do this all the time. Thanks.
Great comment. And I wanted to actually bring that up earlier. I'm going to try not to be long-winded this time. Try. I look in between the lines. So if the individual on his resume has 3 references, I'll call all 3 of those. I have candid questions that I can ask those 3 references. Usually you're on the button with that, Mark. And that is, those references are going to have nothing but positive things to say of that applicant. So here's what I do is I'll go through that resume and I look where their college background is. And I'll make a call to that college coach, of which they didn't put that on a reference. I'll go through what past jobs they've had, and if there's not a reference to that job, I will do my homework, make a phone call to that job, even if it's a front desk person. I've done this before, and I've got a front desk person that I've called at that club, and I said, by the way, do you know Tom Jones? Oh yeah, he worked here for 3 years. Tell me a little bit about him. It's not a reference on the resume. So I do my homework to find out if there's any red flags that come up. And I promise you there has been, and I've just moved on to other resumes, but those are the things that I try to do. So it's important to keep your P's and Q's together as an individual, that you're going to, again, be careful of those skeletons, I guess I want to say. But those are the things that I personally do, is I will check those references, and then I'll go in between the lines and find out where else they've been. So I wouldn't be too long-winded.
Did y'all see that movie Draft Day?
Yeah.
And he was about to draft, and then it's like it was the guy's 21st birthday, and not one of his teammates showed up to his 21st birthday, and it was like a deal breaker. Anyone who lists references, of course they're going to say good things about you, right? They're your references. So to Tom's point, going back to, you know, college coaches or even the last couple clubs, and call the front desk lady. Can I talk to, you know, a pro, any pro who worked with that person, a colleague? How did they get along with colleagues? Because obviously teamwork is huge. So digging between the lines, we do, like I said, a survey that we send our references before we even call them. And it's a lot on character, past performances, and so forth. And it's just to save time. The next phase is actually picking up the phone, making those phone calls to those people. So teamwork and colleagues is huge.
Good. Well, we got a few minutes. If anyone has another question, we got time for one more quick one. If not, actually, that's okay. I want to thank everyone that was on the panel. That was awesome. I think a big part is our next presentation is going to be in about 7 minutes on the court with Bill Anderson. So I think one of the best parts about these workshops is the networking and getting to communicate with people. So we're going to give you a little bit of time, take a quick bathroom break if you want, ask questions outside of the formality of the actual presentation. All right, and we'll see you down in court in just a little bit.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. Good opportunity.
Thank you.